it's like social media content. A lot of it is look at me instead of learn from me. So if it's just self-serving and ego boosting and there's nothing that's relatable to the audience, then you're doing it wrong.
If you have a product or a service or even an idea that you want people to embrace because you know it'll make their lives better, there's no two ways about it. You have to learn to get good at marketing and sales. The good news is that marketing and sales doesn't have to look the way you probably think it does. In fact, I'm always saying, be human, tell stories, sell stuff. And there are few people who do that better than my guest, Ryan Lee. Ryan has been building digital and product-based businesses for 25 years in the insanely competitive spaces of health and nutrition and digital marketing. He has grown, run, and sold multiple businesses and is now playing firmly in what he calls the one-person empire space. Throughout it all, he's relied on email to keep his people close. He has what he calls a daily-ish newsletter. And in this conversation, we talk about how he uses stories to be human and sell stuff. We talk about attracting the right kind of clients so that you love your business and what happens when you don't. And we do a lightning round where Ryan demonstrates on the spot how you can tell a story about anything and make it work for you and your audience. By the end of our conversation, I hope that you'll be confident that you can do this too. So subscribe now for more conversations like this and solid practical strategies for making this work in your business. And now, are you sitting comfortably? Then let's begin. So welcome, Ryan. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Julie. I am ready to tell some stories.
All right. Well, that's exactly what I want to talk to you about because you've been doing email for a long time. You've been writing to people. Email is kind of your thing, among many things, but one of the things you do so well. And when I started following you, one of the things that I really liked was that you often started your emails with a story. And then over the last 6 months to a year, I've noticed that you've changed that. So can we talk a little bit about that, about like, why do you include storytelling stuff in your emails?
Mhm.
And then we'll get to how you used to do it and why you've made that change.
Yeah. Well, I've always wanted to do email as more instead of feeling like you're a copywriter, I just want to write a letter. So I even tell my students, imagine you're sitting down at a coffee shop or at a bar and just having a conversation. So I always wanted it to be conversational. And I never wanted it to come across as pitchy or preachy. Um, so I think I'm a natural storyteller. I used to always tell stories. I used to work in a children's hospital and then I worked with kids with different disabilities. I was a camp counselor my whole life. So I loved story time and just making up stories. That was like my favorite thing. So I love stories. The emails have definitely changed a little bit over the past 6 months. What I used to do was start with something because I write my emails in real time. So I would start with something that kind of anchored uh, the present time, like, okay, it's a rainy Tuesday, or this morning I did this. But what I found was it started to feel, at least on my perspective, it started to feel a little bit repetitive. And I was getting the feeling that it wasn't catching people. It wasn't hooking them in right away because it was more like, hey, it's a rainy Tuesday and someone opening it and they're busy. Like, well, who cares? Like, all right, like get to it. So I still tell stories, but I often start now almost mid conversation. Like I do a lot of coaching calls. So like maybe it starts with a quote and they'll say something to the effect of, dude, what happened to you? And they're like, huh. Now all of a sudden people are like, okay, that's it. Well, what happened? And then they want to know. It kind of opens a loop a little bit. So I've been testing it and it's actually working better. And I like it because it makes me be a little bit more creative versus it's Wednesday. So I'm still telling stories and I love telling stories. But it's just that, yeah, it's changed a little. So in our world, right? In the world of where you're teaching information and you're the advice game, I think you have to know the difference between telling a story for the sake of telling a story and telling a story with you want an outcome eventually. If I'm just telling a story, it's like, oh, and today I did this, and then I bought this new like phone case, and it's great. Have a great day. People be like, oh, what the heck? Like, what's the point? So it still has to tie into whatever action you want them to take and where you want to move them to. And in the advice world, my it sounds repetitive, my advice in the advice world, but, is they should still walk away with something tactical. And it's not always easy to do, to tell a story and still have a, okay, here's what you should be doing, right? Whether you're in the health space or personal development or fitness or investing, there should be something to walk away from. Otherwise, I think it feels a little bit empty, and nothing that they can hold on to. With like, oh my god, I can't wait to read the next email that's filled with fluff. So,
Because that's, I mean, that thing that you said there, if you're saying you're starting a story with something about you, and people are like, "Well, why the hell do I care?" And that's something that people often ask me when we're talking about getting more story into your marketing. People are like, "Well, why would people care about me?"
well, it's not. It shouldn't be about you. It should always be about the audience and what's in it for them, right? And a lot of so you can tell a story based on your personal experience, but it should always instantly, as quick as you can, shift to, here's how you can use it. And I think what a lot of people do is they start telling a story about themselves and they never take it off themselves. And the whole thing is just about me, me, me. And you could tell. And I just did it recently. So I taught a social media class and I said, show me your posts. And I went through like 4 or 5 posts. And every post, what I did was I highlighted every time they used the word I or me. And shocking. It would like a 5 paragraph post would have the word I or me or mine like 30 times. And it's it's not about you. So you have to immediately shift it to. So even if I don't know, let's do one on the spot. Give me something to talk about. I'll make up a story on the spot and talk about how I could shift it to someone, to the audience.
Let's say, dog training.
Dog training. Okay. So let's say, and I don't have a dog, but let's say I did. Um, and my lesson for today, I want to give people, like, let's say I want them to learn how to train their dogs better, right?
Yeah, so
What?
they don't want their dog to bark when someone comes to the front door.
Okay. So you don't want a dog to bark when someone comes to the front door. Okay. So a story can be about how, uh, maybe it was about someone who came to your door last night or it was last week, right? They rang the doorbell at 6 o'clock. And so you can start off with, everybody froze. You know, it's 6 p.m. We're about to sit down for dinner. The doorbell rang and we all looked at the dog waiting for her to bark, but she didn't bark, right? Now, here's where instead of keeping it on you, you can shift to them. So instead of saying, I was surprised, I turned to my wife, I couldn't believe my dog wasn't barking, oh, how surprised I was. I would immediately go to, you know, um, if you have a dog, you know that feeling. You're terrified. You think that, oh my God, my dog is going to attack the person at the door. You know that. So now all of a sudden, you could still kind of get to it and get to the eventually lead them to the point where, okay. And the one tactic I learned was make sure, train them with ringing the doorbell 5 times. I know nothing, but
Whatever it
you
is,
know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Right. But the idea is
So
instead of,
can you break that down for me, what you did there? Because you took the idea of somebody coming to the door and you made it very concrete. So why are you doing that?
um, because it, you mean the concrete of like someone coming to the door?
Yeah, like the way like, as you say, you're a natural storyteller, so maybe you don't even know why you're doing it.
I don't know why, because how are you gonna keep people engaged, right? First, you've gotta cut right to it, and we don't edit enough, right? We go on with superficial details, and especially in an email, you have to remember most people are reading it on their phone, right? And if it's like 7 paragraphs to get to something, you're gonna lose them. I think I get it from, uh my laziness kinda helped. I loved, and I still do, movies, TV. Like, I grew up on I still, to this day, every night, I've gotta watch some new shows, and I love storytelling, and I'm obsessed. Like, I could say, "Oh, that's," you could tell the director based on that or the cinematographer 'cause I'm obsessed with stuff. But I think it's about editing, and instead of saying, making it very theoretical, and I think some people do that too. They're scared to tell any kind of real story, so they'll say, you know imagine if you have a dog and what if there's a distraction and maybe someone rings a doorbell or maybe, you're at a park or maybe does this ever happen to you? And it doesn't feel real. So I like to ground it in like a real story. And if it's not um, a story that you know that's based on you, maybe it's based on a friend or based on something you heard. Don't lie. Don't say my doorbell rang, but say I was watching a show and the doorbell rang, or my neighbor told me the funny story that their doorbell rang. So you could still quickly bring it to where it still feels kind of personal-ish. But, yeah, I like getting to real world and stuff that's relatable, stuff that people are shaking their head like, oh my god, I know that feeling," right? You want them to reply saying, "Julie, you read my mind." Like,
Yeah.
you and that's and I also love stand-up comedy, and I think the best stand-up comedians do that. They get these kind of real relatable things where you're shaking your head like, "Oh my god, I totally get that." So, yeah.
Yeah, and then you're bringing it back round to them very quickly.
Always, you gotta
Yeah.
shine the spotlight on them because it's not about you. It's never about you, and I say this, and I said this in my class last week, and I say this with kindness, no one cares, right? Like, they don't care. Like, they don't care, like, what you had for lunch. They don't care about this stuff. You've got to make it about them. You
So
always
there's
have to
the
make
like, it's fun to get to know you. Like, I feel like I know you a little bit because of the things you choose to tell stories about. And sure, you've told sort of your origin story or your like um brand story. Like, I know where your business started because you talk about that occasionally.
Mhm.
But you're writing emails every day and you're telling these little relatable stories
Yeah.
all the time.
Ah, well, when you have 4 kids and I'm 51 and I've had real world experience. Like, I've been out and I've been building businesses on my own now for 25 years. And before that, I worked in the children's hospital for 6 years. I was a gym teacher. Like, I've done a lot, and I'm always trying to get out and experience the world. And I don't just sit huddled, you know, on my couch under the blanket, like, afraid to go. Like, you have to experience world. But I do love watching, again, movies and shows and stories and reading books, not just business books, but reading lots of fiction as well, like, by good authors who get you hooked in, who tell good stories. But yeah, I love just speaking like a real human being, and I think that's when you nail it, when you meet someone in real life, and they say to you, "Oh my god, you're exactly the same in email."
Mm.
That's the best compliment you can get because it shows that you're just letting your guard down and just being you and telling stories. And I think it does take practice. Like, I've been doing it for a really long time, and that's how I can instantly go from the story of a dog, the
Yeah.
the doorbell. Again, I don't have a dog, but doing it and then quickly getting to the person because you always have to shine the spotlight on them. So I think that's a really important part of the story, and just also being you and leaning into your personality. I'm from New York originally, so I still have a little bit of that sarcasm. I add in a little rolling of the eyes emoji. I like to cause a little bit of a ruckus. So that's kind of my personality, and I think you should all embrace yours, and don't be afraid to do that. But it takes time and it takes repetition, and you have to when you start emailing, you can't get into the thing of, "Okay, now I'm gonna sound like a copywriter from the 1950s," you know? "Who else wants to do this?" Because that's not story and that's not engaging, and I think that just repels people.
Yeah.
It's
And you
really
said, I mean, you talk about the fact that you've got 4 children and you've got, things about your lifestyle that you will allude to, but I never feel like you're oversharing. Are you conscious about that? Because people worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, everyone has their own boundaries, right? There are some people who will say anything. "Oh my god, my took a crap." I don't. Yeah, I mean, I have lines, right? And in personal life, and my wife is a complete opposite of me. She doesn't share anything online. She has never. I swear to you, Julie, she's never taken a selfie ever. She just
Oh,
hasn't. She never has, never will. So it's just her. She's very like kind of more conservative in that world. So I am careful. I don't share stuff that would. I don't like content that purposefully is hurtful or embarrassing, or makes fun of people's looks or anything like that. I'll tell some stories, but I do think, and you've mentioned it twice now because I think it's an important topic as well. Is that you still need your kind of superhero origin story, and you should pepper it in, but you don't have to hammer people over the head with it all the time. You can layer it in. So, and you could layer it in subtly. So, for example, with this, okay, using this example, the dog, right? What I could say, if I want people to subtly know, so if it's their first time in my list, and I want them to know, like, I build lifestyle businesses, and my family is the most important thing, and I have 4 kids, so and I'm proud of that, that I'm able to do this and still be an active, involved dad and never miss any of their sports. But so I could say subtly, instead of saying, "Hey, I'm Ryan, I have 4 kids," it could say, "The doorbell rang. I look around at my wife and my 4 kids, and we were in shock." Boom, right? I just said that I'm a dad of 4 without saying that I have 4 kids and I build lifestyle businesses. But you can add those in subtly. It's like cooking, right? Like having a little bit of seasoning, but you don't want to over season it, because then you sound like a one trick pony in one note, and like, oh my God, enough. But you could work.
And then what do you find, like, if you're presenting yourself and you're saying there's certain things you don't like to say because you don't want to be making fun of people and all this. So what does that do for the people that you attract into your business? Do you get the right kind of people is basically what I'm.
Oh, I think I do. I mean,
You mean you
with
don't dread going on coaching calls and,
no, I used to. I
Oh,
used to. There was maybe it was 12 years ago, 13. I was going through like a really kind of, I call it my dark years, like talking about the superhero thing, right? I became like the evil Superman or something. And my products were very aggressive, like robo commissions. And I was going on webinars and I was speaking at these events and pitching, and I was attracting a lot of biz op, you know, I don't care what I sell. I just want to sell a $2,000 product type stuff. And that's when I started to really dread it and be like, all right, this doesn't feel good. Like I'm attracting the wrong people. So now I'm upfront. This is what I do. And I do these different, and I have a nutrition business, and I just sold my other supplement company. Like I'm transparent. I say, but if you're going to do it, it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? Writing a story, I think, is simple, but it's not easy. So I tell people this is going to take work. If you want a push button, that's cool. I'm not your guy. So I really am trying to attract the right people. And I think with my sense of humor, or I try to be funny. Again, my wife would disagree, but I think I'm funny.
that's all that matters.
And more self-deprecating stuff like I just did. But I think I'm trying also to attract people who want to chase the fun. Even the colors of my brand and my copy and my writing, it just is a little bit more loose. It's less aggressive, and I don't put pressure on people. Like, hey, we have this new program. Here it is. I think it's a really good value. If you want to get it, cool. Here you go. And if not, that's cool too. So I'm definitely really enjoying. Like I just did a coaching call earlier today, and he was such a good guy. He owns a sports training facility in Chicago. I was helping him kind of go through a whole system and how he could start selling online, and just a really good guy. I'm like, I like you. So I enjoy it, and I think you should do. By you being you, you're going to attract the people who like your personality and your stories, and then you're going to repel the people who don't like you. There are people who probably find me annoying and like, oh my God, enough. I remember during my nutrition company before I sold it, I used a lot of humor, and one person was so, I have a PhD in nutrition. I'm an RD, and I find your humor, off-putting. You shouldn't make jokes. Nutrition is serious. People are dying for this, and you should never make jokes and have fun when it comes to nutrition. And I'm like, you're not for me. Yeah,
Good luck with
cool.
that.
But I think when you water it down, you run into the middle, and then you don't say anything, and then everything's like blah. And I think that's what most people are. They're playing it safe, and they
Yeah.
say, "Oh, okay," and they'll listen to that person. Oh, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't joke. And then everything is, if you want to succeed, you must drink 8 glasses of water a day. Water is important. Drink more water. Like it's just, there's enough of that crap. So I'm ready to bring a little bit of fun and soul. So that's my storytelling in a nutshell, Julie.
And I think that's a perfect illustration of how people can tell personal stories, like share about themselves without being weird or creepy or oversharing, but like sharing the essence of who you are through the stories you choose to tell, the things you choose to to point at, right?
Right, and
And to choose
tell
to highlight the Live Aid poster behind you, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, you could share the good, like, share wins and stuff, but don't forget to share some of the stuff that doesn't work because no one's perfect, and if you always come from this thing of, like, "Everything's perfect, look how amazing I am," w we don't like you, and if you're always like, "Woe is me, life stinks," and you're always depressing, you're kind of annoying us now, and you're depressing us, and we don't wanna follow you either, so you've gotta be able to, find that like, be a human being, right? That there you
Shocking.
go. That's the storytelling in a nutshell. Be a friggin' human being. And we all have ups, we all have downs. You can share the ups and downs. Don't just share the ups, don't just share the downs, and tell engaging stories. And if you can, have a little bit of fun with it. The world's pretty heavy, so people are looking to lighten up a little bit. So
Speaking of your programs, what are you up to these days and where can people find you?
Right now, the best place thank you for that, Julie. The best place is just ryanlee.com, ryanlee.com, and I have a daily-ish newsletter where I give business and marketing advice for entrepreneurs, mostly solopreneurs, people who wanna start like a lean, almost one-person type business. Um, and it's just I think it's good stuff. I've been doing it for like 25 years, and I've built businesses in God, so many different industries, health and nutrition and supplements and I've had membership sites and software. So now I've recently sold one of my bigger companies and now I'm just kind of now that I'm 51, I'm just playing and having fun and writing and teaching. So, yeah, we'll see where it goes. I don't know. Who knows what the future holds, but there will be some stories about it. You know that, Julie.
Dude, thank you so much for being with me. And I'm gonna wrap things up here and send people over to ryanlee.com.
Thank you, Julie.